Morning chips. We're gonna do a walk around of the old C10. Show you what kind of tips and tricks I can for a cheap turbo build. First thing I would say about cheap turbo builds is tuning. You gotta have a plan. On this particular truck, I'm using the Holley Sniper EFI, which takes care of that. If you have a stock E36 BMW, there are other avenues of tuning. You can solder a chip on there or do, I don't know, all kind of weird stuff. Tuning is going to be your biggest enemy. Everything else, fabrication, bolting it on, plumbing, wiring, all that stuff, relatively easy. Most people can do it if you take the time. Some people can't weld, but if you can't weld, you can find a shop that welds, or you can buy kits that bolt on. So if you're planning on doing a cheap turbo build or an expensive turbo build or whatever, tuning is something you got to figure out at the very beginning. Otherwise you'll have a cool turbo project that doesn't run worth a shit, or you blow it up right away. So tuning, number one. Now let's get into what else I got going on over here, and I'll show you how I turboed a small block Chevy in my long bed C10. So here's the old girl. Bought it with a straight 6 in it. Bought a small block Chevy off my buddy, slapped it in there, and started going to town on some eBay turbos. I bought an eBay turbo kit that had manifolds, turbos, wastegates, and I think that was it. But the manifolds were center exit, and they would have put the turbo right here, and they also would have put the turbo right here. So pretty early on I realized that those manifolds weren't going to work. So I went on Amazon and I bought some shorty headers for small block Chevy, and we cut the flanges, the T3, T4 flanges off the manifold, and welded them on to these shorty headers and turned the headers upside down. And then added the wastegate tube right there. These wastegates came with the kit. Right now I just got the wastegate dumping into nowhere, and I do plan on changing that, but I just haven't yet. And then I built an exhaust system. The exhaust part is a little difficult, especially on this truck. You don't have a whole lot of room to work with. I don't know if you can see that. Just clearing the heater box, but it's sitting on the manifold here. And then this one just clears the steering shaft there. There's not a whole lot of room. If you have a different configuration, maybe you don't have an AC truck, you might get a little bit more room. Maybe you got no booster, you might have a little bit more room. For the Holley, I put the oxygen sensor right in here. Where is it? Can't see nothing. There it is, right there. On turbo exhaust and turbo downpipes, I like to put a flex joint in there because there's a lot of heat that generates. There's a lot of heat and growth in the downpipe, so you put a flex pipe in there to sort of compensate for that. Right now I'm running wastegate pressure, which means I'm running pressure from the compressor housing. Jeez, I should have mapped this out first. There you go, right there. Right to the bottom of the wastegate. So that means that whatever spring is in that wastegate Right now I would say it's a 7-pound spring, so once you create 7 pounds of boost here, it applies 7 pounds to the back of that wastegate spring and opens up the wastegate, thereby controlling the boost. You can see on this side as well, they're just looped right there. This is where you would put a boost controller in there, snip that, put a manual boost controller in there, and then you can control the boost that the wastegate sees. I got this $37 blow-off valve. You can already see that the O-ring is cracking. These, you know, comparable precision or tile units, like 350 bucks, so $37, it's working pretty well. On a sniper, you're gonna need a boost reference fuel pressure gauge or fuel pressure regulator, and I got a gauge so I could set base pressure. So this increases fuel pressure 1 psi for every 1 psi of boost. So you'll need that if you're, typically you need that on really any turbo build. What else? Right now I'm running non-intercooled, as you can see. Now, is this the best thing to do? Absolutely not. Does it work? Yes. One thing that I hadn't thought about until somebody mentioned it is that this actually isn't that bad because the air is flowing over atomized fuel in the sniper and cooling the charge down, similar to what a supercharger does. I don't know if you've ever seen a top mount supercharger and they go icy cold when they first start up, because when air blows over atomized fuel, it actually cools it down. So I can see my intake air temperature, my manifold air temperature, and I don't really often get over 110, 115, which you still want it cooler than that, but that's not bad. Especially being that I cruise this thing and I don't actually really get on it. Next thing for the turbos is the oil feed. Most turbos are at least oil feed, if not oil and water cooled. So my oil feed comes back here to, you can't see it, but there's the oil pressure port on the back of a small block Chevy. So right now I have them teed back there and I'm not actually running an oil pressure gauge. You can see that right here. So for better or worse, no oil pressure gauge, but my turbos have oil. After that, we got oil drain from the turbo. So I got some fittings on there, a little bit of heat sleeve, and then you can see right down there, I welded some bungs onto the oil pan, and that actually posed a problem because the big old starter I had for it didn't fit. So I ended up having to get a smaller starter because I didn't do any mock-up. I just picked a point in the oil pan and I said, that's good right there. And then I welded them on and then it didn't fit. So mock-up is a important thing that you should do that I don't very often. But I guess the next thing we can talk about is fuel. So on this regulator, I got it just adapted right here. What I did was actually take out the Holley fuel pressure regulator, and so now it's free flowing in from the other side, comes around here, not regulated here, but it is regulated here, and you can see my return line is right there. So you remove this regulator in favor of a boost referenced regulator. Alright, so next thing we're going to talk about is fuel. When you add air, you gotta add fuel. Let's just wait for this plane to go by. So what I have done here is, let me see if I can do this. This is the feed from the factory gas tank. So on carbureted trucks, cars, whatever, there's just a little straw that goes down into the tank and picks up fuel. That's it. On a carburetor, there's a fuel bowl which stores fuel, so if you take a corner or whatever, there's still fuel in the fuel bowl of the carburetor. On a fuel injection car, there is no reserve. There is only the fuel pressure from the fuel tank. So what I have done here is, this is the feed from the fuel tank. This feed goes out and into my surge tank. This creates a reserve of fuel that's always there. So if there's fuel in here, even if it's getting low, this thing is full, because it feeds in here out to the tank, and there is a return from this tank, from the top of this tank, back into the main tank. So once this fills up, when it goes all the way down, fills up, once it gets full and there's too much fuel, it just feeds right back into this tank, keeping this full. Then from there, we got a big feed line down here too, and this is a carburetor style low pressure fuel pump. So then we have a feed right here to a fuel injection pump. So this thing is capable of 80 or 90 psi of fuel pressure. This is a generic Bosch fuel pump, kind of like an 044, but not really. Similar though. So this thing, I don't know what it's rated at, but it's got enough fuel. So this bottom line feeds the high pressure fuel pump, and this feeds the sniper. The return line from the sniper comes back into this tank. So the focus is really always keeping this tank full of fuel, so that this pump always has fuel to draw from. That makes cornering, stopping, accelerating, whatever, there's no slosh, because this thing is tiny and fuel can't slosh around, and it's also always full. So the return from the rail goes to here, the feed goes to here, and then this thing, once it's full, like I said, it returns back to this tank for if I'm idling or something like that, and this is pushing too much fuel and we're getting too much return fuel, this thing will feed back into the tank. So you want to make sure that your fuel pump is capable of putting out the fuel you need for your application. Did you get all that? I don't know which way the camera is right now. Did you get all that? Did you get all that? Good, great. All right, so real quick, exhaust system. I built all this garbage, custom X-pipe, downpipes, oil leaks. I got a lot of oil leaks. We're not worried about that. Oh, look at all that oil leaking. I had some oil leaks, all right? They're fixed now, kind of. I gotta do one more thing. That's it. Also forgot to mention, there is a port on the front of the Holly that is manifold vacuum and boost pressure. You hook up your blow-off valve to both manifold vacuum and boost pressure. So this hose sees whatever the intake manifold sees, and that's where you put your blow-off valve. That is so that under idle conditions or vacuum conditions, this will be open, all the air will be bypassing. Once there's boost in the manifold, this thing slams shut, and then as soon as you lift off, this opens back up. Another thing to think about is vacuum. If you have heater controls or any other vacuum they vary on different cars what's controlled by vacuum, but if you have a non-turbo car or a non-boosted car and then you put a turbo on it, chances are you're going to need check valves, because you don't want to apply boost or pressure to something that is designed to only see vacuum or no vacuum. So on most brake boosters, for instance, this is a check valve. That's a factory check valve. So this only sucks one way. That allows it to store up vacuum in the booster so that your brakes work even if you're hot on the throttle or whatever. I don't have any vacuum stuff hooked up right now. My heater controls aren't hooked up. But if they were, I would put a check valve in there so that they can only see vacuum and not boost. One thing I forgot to mention about tuning is also timing. In this I have the Holley Hyperspark distributor and coil, and it's all driven by this coil driver that comes with the, or used to come with the Sniper. Typically, at least on small block Chevys, they say to pull 1 degree of timing per pound of boost to be safe. But being that this is all stock and everything is not set up for a turbo, I went super safe, and I have about 1.5 to 2 degrees of timing per pound of boost pulled, so it's really safe. And I can feel that it wants a little bit more. It probably wants all of it, but just like any good woman, if you give her everything she wants, she's probably gonna blow up in your face.
That doesn't even make sense.
Alright, that's gonna be it for your walk around here. Real basic overview of what I got going on. Just remember, if you're gonna start doing this, tuning. I can't say it enough. You know, this is a stock bottom end or a stock everything crate 350. No ring gap, no turbo cam, no nothing. And I have it running real safe on the tune, so I'm able to keep it alive. I'm running about 7.5 pounds of boost. And she scoots. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you want to see more, I got plans for this truck, leave a comment, subscribe, like. If you got questions, put them down in the comments. I'll answer any questions. Built a lot of turbo cars, had a couple trucks, done a lot of Sniper installs. So if you got questions, let me know. If you want to see more burnouts, we can make that happen. You know, she's a 1 tire fire right now. You know, but she likes them up good. So, all right, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment. See me on the side of the road, pull over, give me a hand. You know the deal. All right, see you next time.